On May 10th, a really big announcement came out of Google I/O. And this was the launch, or at least the unveiling, of the search generative experience. And I was really expecting this to kind of go through the digital legal marketing world very, really quickly. I haven't heard much about it. The search generative experience is a complete shift in the way the search engine results page are delivered. It is a complete shift in the way that Google sees people interacting with search, and it is entirely driven by AI. And so what I'm going to cover over the next little time is we're going to learn a little bit more about what we saw when they announced it. We're going to talk about two other elements. One is perspectives and one is about this author. I'm going to go into why I think Google is launching these components, because I think the why is often as important as the what, especially when you're trying to figure out what Google is doing. And finally, we now that the SGE has been out in, it's not even been in the wild, but some of the more advanced SEOs have had an opportunity to get their hands on it. And I'm going to showcase what we've learned by actually messing with SGE. We currently don't have a date for its deployment, but we'll get into all of that. But first, I want to say when ChatGPT first came out, the thing that struck me was not like, wow, we can create more content, throw more stuff up on our website. And I think this is often going to be incorrectly seen as an SEO opportunity. In legal, there is not a positive content. There is plenty of content, 10 ways to Sunday. And so I never really saw ChatGPT, although it's, revolutionary. I didn't really see it changing the SEO game and the marketing game in general. Now, it just makes it easier for people to generate good content. Google had a complete 180 on their policy around artificial intelligence. So it's here to stay. What can you do with it? But it's never going to, the generation of more content is never going to be the thing that wins or loses the SEO wars. So what I really thought about was, hey, listen, is it possible that this indicates a shift in the way consumers behave? So right now, the model is that we're all very accustomed to. You go to a search engine, you look for something that is already out there to answer your question as best as it can. That means there's a limitation in how specific you can be in your query. We know this is the long tail, because that content has to exist out there as a piece of content. And what I thought was perhaps consumers would shift their behavior. So instead of looking for that piece of content, would they go to a bot, an engine, and ask that engine to generate content in real time for a very, very specific query? So for example, I'm thinking about getting a divorce. I have two middle school children. One has autism. They're very worried about where they're going to spend holidays and if they get to see their grandparents anymore. Can you help me write and put some thoughts together to talk to them about this very, very hard conversation? That's not the kind of thing that you can do with traditional search. So is there going to be a shift in consumer behavior towards that? Turns out Google anticipates exactly that happening. And SGE, or the Search Generative Experience, is built around that exact concept. And we're going to go into what this actually looks like. But at first, what I really want to share and what I really want to show off, because it is so fascinating, is some of Google's perspectives that they shared when they launched SGE. And so I've got a couple quotes from different people. The interesting thing is here, we're going to be expanding the range of helpful information you can find. Okay. So this is really, really fascinating. And by the way, these bolds are mine. Expanding the range of helpful information that you can find. And the second thing, and again, my bold here is from a different person at Google: easily learn more about the authors behind the content they are reading and discovering new voices they can trust. So my take here, and you'll see this later on in some of the other products that Google has launched, both perspectives and about this author, is that Google is responding to the very fair concern that we're living in this thought bubble. That I'll use myself as an example because I'm a bleeding heart liberal. I typically get my news content delivered to me by the search engines from places like CNN and Rachel Maddow. I don't see the other side of the story, and I have to go out of my way to find content from Fox News, for example. And that creates this thought bubble where we're increasingly convinced that we are right because everything that we read is self-reinforcing about the positions that we already have. And so these two quotes here, they really talk about the background of the authors and the range of helpful information that people can find. And I find this very, very insightful. So with the Search Generative Experience, two things were launched as well. One was this concept called perspectives, and this is what perspectives look like. This was a query for the Oscars, and what you're seeing is these perspectives, literally the word perspective, and capital P, this is a noun, this is a product, it's perspective. They're showing different perspectives of what happened and different takes on the Oscars just when you search the Oscars, and they're trying to pick people who are well known here. So the question for a lawyer becomes, how do you become a perspective when people are doing legal research? That is going to be a new game that we need to learn how to play. But it's not all the same echo chamber that I would otherwise have received based on my previous search history from the search engines. Okay, so that's really fascinating. Another thing that comes out of this is what's known as about this. And what Google is trying to do is showcase the background of the people from whom they are drawing the results. Some of you may remember rel equals author. Rel equals author was an attempt to have as a ranking factor the expertise and quality of the person who wrote the content. Now, because SEOs, especially legal SEOs, spammed the crap out of rel equals author, it was abandoned, I want to say, within 12 months. It was at least publicly abandoned. And the cool thing with the visible thing that happened with rel equals author is you would get your little picture next to the result directly in the search result. So if I wrote a piece of content and you search for that content surfaced on a search result, a little picture of Conrad would show up next to that piece of content. It was very, very, it was an ego boost for all of the people out there. But again, it was spammed, and so Google abandoned it after 12 months. But I don't know that they did. And a lot of SEOs have believed that they have continued to use the reputation of the person who wrote that piece of content as a ranking factor for the content, right? And so is that true? Is it not true? I don't know. That's supposition frankly, on my part. I don't believe it ever actually went away. But now what's happening is you can actually dive into the background of the person who wrote the content that is being shown up in the search results. So Google is trying to showcase that they're drawing from authoritative sources. And if you want to dig deeper into that authoritative source, here's how to do that. So that says to me, again, what do lawyers have to do to become an authoritative source? What are the things that we can do to play the rel equals author game while Google Plus is no longer here, which was the key to rel equals author? What else is driving authorship? Okay, so that becomes really, really fascinating. So the Search Generative Experience is really, really fascinating. And my recommendation is to watch this video. I want you to see some of the interesting pieces in here. But the quick top level is a query will be responded to by AI generated, in real time AI generated result, which means you don't have to click through to anything to get information about your query, which is going to impact everyone who drives traffic from an SEO perspective. That content, that AI content, is going to be drawn from a variety of sources, and you will be able to dig deeper into each of those sources to learn more. So again, how do you become one of those sources from which Google is generating that AI generated content? And finally, you'll have things like about this. So you can be able to drive deeper into SGE results and learn more and more. And one of the generative part of SGE is you can ask a follow-up question, and your follow-up query will be impacted by your previous query. So it is much more conversational, right? So for example, I'd like some, what are the best brands of peanut butter, right? Okay, so here's a peanut butter. I would like to see organic options. I would like to see organic options below $3, right? And you can dig deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and the search looks more like a conversation than finding out the perfect query to write at the very, very beginning. And again, this goes back to a very, very long tail, but the results again are driven by AI, not necessarily something that already pre-exists on the web. Super, super fascinating. Okay, so I'm going to share the Search Generative Experience. You can find this on YouTube, and I would recommend that you watch it because this is definitely a case of a picture's worth 1,000 words. But I'm going to stop this on a couple of occasions to highlight some of the elements of this video that are very, very telling.
I'ma make them talk like, whoa, move fast, move slow.
All right, so here is your Search Generative Experience, okay? So what you'll see is you've got the query here. This content at the top is AI generated. These are the sources that it's drawing from, and you can dig deeper into those sources.
Catch me on a roll. Come say hello. 3, 2, 1, let's go.
Again, AI content. Here's your follow-up question.
Yes.
And look at this, different styles of content, different types of content coming right in. So this is video content coming directly into the AI generated search results box.
Yes.
Come say hello. 3, 2, 1, let's go.
So look at this. What they just did here is super, super fascinating. They compared 2 different restaurants. Imagine that's 2 different lawyers, and now you want to add a third. Where is this type of content going to come from? Very, very fascinating, right?
You got this. Let's go.
Again, video content coming right into this.
Is a hot dog a sandwich? And the answer is
Yes.
no.
Yes.
No.
Okay, so that's a great example there of where they've used a very innocuous thing to showcase that they're showing multiple perspectives on an issue. In this case, it was is a hot dog a sandwich, but you can imagine multiple perspectives on, I mean, politics is the obvious answer, but where does this come across in legal? What does this look like? How are they showing a broad array of opinions and perspectives on legal questions? That is going to be there.
Make 'em talk like whoa, 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 whoa. I'ma make 'em talk like.
I'ma make 'em talk like whoa.
All right. So that was really, really fascinating. You can see how this is fundamentally different to the typical search experience that we are very, very accustomed to over time. All right. Now, one thing that came up with SGE was it is not going to impact YMYL categories, and YMYL stands for your money, your life. The question is, does legal fall into YMYL categories? In many cases, you could argue yes, and in some cases, you could argue otherwise. My take, and we're going to get into this, we've seen already that it does, and I'll show you some examples of where SGE has been applied to legal that I would probably consider YMYL topics, but it does not look like is living outside of the consequences of this change to the search engine results page. Okay. So questions become, can you become a source? Does your website become a source? Is that something that gets drilled deeper into? And note that this is a completely new, like we know these search engine algorithms, SEO. We know the organic algorithms. We know what drives local, right? We know what drives the LSAs. We know what drives pay-per-click. All, it's different math with different factors impacting things differently. This is a new thing to learn. So don't think that your typical SEO work is going to make you successful here. This is brand new. It's based on the large language models. You have to know what those are. You have to know how to impact those large language models. Are you a part of the data set or not? Like this is brand new. This is a new thing. Okay. Another question that people have about SGE is advertising. And so what Google has told you about advertising is it is going to be included in SGE results. However, they are not going to segment, at least for now, they are not going to segment SGE out versus typical pay-per-click ads and so you're not going to be able to have a campaign that focuses on SGE as opposed to typical pay-per-click. There's going to be and you can't opt out of it. There's really going to be no distinguishing factors between Google Ads as we typically know them and Google Ads showing up in search generative experience. And my take on the reason for this is Google doesn't want to take money out of the advertising ecosystem because the more bidders that are in the ecosystem, the higher those bids become and the more profit Google makes, frankly. So I personally, my assessment here is that Google is not going to take this out, not going to enable you to segment out your Google ads by SGE content or, the traditional Google ads advertisements. But I could be wrong, right? We don't know. We're going to be learning a lot about this, right? We're going to be learning a lot about this. Search generative experience, this is a new thing for the entire industry to learn. One of the things we have learned, and because this is so transparent and ChatGPT is the same, understanding where the content is being drawn from becomes very, very fascinating. Okay. Very, very fascinating. And so one of the things that we know by looking at sources in ChatGPT is it relies heavily on the directories, which is really fascinating. So for me, the directories have been kind of dead for at least the last 5 years, if not longer, kind of relegated to the bottom of the page in the organic listings, and no one really wants to go there anyway. They can't play the LSA game. They can't afford to play the PPC game. They can't live in local. They're kind of, 3 to 7 of the results in the organic listings down at the very bottom. No one clicks on them, right? Having said that, when you're talking about things like expertise and authorship and being a really, really trusted resource, the LLMs seem to like the directories, right? And so this may be the saving grace or the resurgency of the importance of directories as the LLMs look to, and by the way, we know this for now. Does this change? Probably. I don't know how, but it makes sense to me that if you have authoritative directories about the quality of lawyers, for example, like a super lawyer's listings, your AVA rating, all these things become computer, these are things that a computer can look at and say, yes, I believe this person is an authority on this because of X, Y, and Z. You can see that. It's not that hard it's not a huge jump. So I would think that the directories are going to become increasingly important, kind of a swing back to importance based on SGE content. But again, we don't know what we've seen yet. As I mentioned, some of the SEO nerds have had a chance to get their hands on SGE. It was announced May 10, and it's now just over 2 weeks later, and they've released it to a small number of, frankly, mostly well-known search nerds. And so it's been good to get our hands on this. What I'm going to pull out of here is primarily from Lily Ray and Mike King, two people I've known for years and years and years. And so here's the feedback that we've got so far. The first question that I posed was, does this have an issue? Is YMYL going to make this something that is not included in the legal industry so we don't have to think about it? Turns out that my supposition and Guy's supposition as well is correct. It is still going to show and trigger for queries that involve legal, although with heavy disclaimers. So expect SGE to hit legal. Another thing that became very, very clear is my read of, and I'm not trying to make myself sound brilliant, but it's what they were showcasing. My read that they're trying to showcase a breadth and array of opinions, perspectives, ideas. So it is not this echo chamber of self-fulfilling thought, is very, very real. A couple other comments that came out of this. It takes a long time to load. So AI, not super surprisingly, takes a little time to load. So it's taking around 5 seconds for that AI generated box to actually generate, which is amazing that it's only done in 5 seconds. And yet we're really, really accustomed. Google has taught us 5 seconds is far too long to wait. So the question becomes, do people scroll past that? Or is Google going to have to adapt and generate content much more quickly or less content so they can actually generate that more quickly? And finally, and this was something that did not come out at all, but is very, very important for legal and many other small businesses. This did not come out in the initial demos, but the linking, there's an integration of local businesses into these results. This is where this gets very fascinating for legal. So the question becomes, which we do not know the answer to, how do I get my Google business profile integrated into and linked out to from the SGE results? That is going to be a very, very big deal. So I didn't really think about it when it first came out, but there is clearly an integration with local results, local businesses, and all driven off of Google business profiles into that SGE content, right? So that is going to be super fascinating to figure out what are the ties that make that happen. All right. So we still have a lot to learn. There's still a lot that's going to change. We're still going to evolve. We don't know when this is going to go live. and be rolled out broadly. I suspect, as Google typically does, they're going to roll this out carefully with testing, and it's going to be a bit of a nightmare to actually deal with. But expect massive changes, and it's going to hit legal, and it is going to change the way that people search for lawyers, search for information about lawyers, and therefore it's going to change the lawyers that they actually end up connecting with. All right. Thank you so much.